I'm going to use this clip as a intro to part 32 of the tractor, the 1066 tractor. And you probably can see from the rear end and what's over at the bottom of the chainfall on the left hand side, where this video, this portion of this chapter is going. One of the things that I have to do is I've got to go back down to my IH dealer. I've asked them a couple of times whether they had a rear end gasket kit, and they do not sell, apparently they don't handle gasket kits for the rear end. Now, whether there's gasket kits made for the rear end, I have no idea, but my IH dealer does not carry them. So I've got to go down there and see what I can get, see if I can go through their parts book and see if I can figure out what gaskets I'm going to need and get them ordered. I'm pretty much assume that they're probably not going to have them in stock, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do have them in stock. It's kind of sometimes kind of amazing. You go down there looking for a part thinking it's a very common part and they're going to have it in stock, and they don't, and then you go down there looking for other parts that aren't so common and they do have them in stock. And whether it's just a turnover thing, you know, maybe that part that's not common has been sitting in there for 10 or 20 years. But I regress. At the same time I go down there, I'm also going to ask them, Jerry, one of my viewers, gave me a reference number of a manual that might better suit my purposes for this tractor than the other ones, so I'll ask him about that at the same time. So this video is going to be about, it's going to start out with me still trying to get that hydraulic unit assembly that's under the seat off of the top of it. And I know that I've covered it in a couple of other videos. You know, I talked about it, and I really didn't get a lot of viewer input as to what I thought that adjustment shaft was. Well, it turns out, and you'll see it in the video, that I couldn't get it apart that way. And once it does come apart, it'll become very evident as to why I couldn't get it apart. And I'm kind of kicking myself in the ass for not realizing that from the get-go. You know, if I had used common sense and logic looking at that adjustment shaft, I should have realized that the way that it was constructed and how you adjusted it, that it had to be attached to something solid in order to adjust it. And I'm really common sense kind of went out the window when me looking at that. I probably should have taken, you know, a harder thought process about that whole thing, and I would have realized that how you adjusted that shaft would mean that it had to be attached to something down below. And that's exactly what happened. There was would have been absolutely no way that I could have gotten that thing apart that way. Now, I say that without having actually looked at that adjustment shaft. Maybe I could have taken that adjustment shaft through that that little cover plate that you got access to it. Maybe I could have taken it apart that way, and it would have slipped out, would have stayed attached to the bottom half, and I could have taken that top part off. But somehow I've got to get that thing up on the bench, that cover plate, or the seat, I call it the seat post plate, up on a bench, and look at the underside of it. See, first of all, I'm kind of curious as to how the pivot arms for the 3-point hitch work up under there. And as you can see over there, that is all contained inside of that cover plate. So I want to get up underneath there, make sure that linkage and everything to that adjustment bolt is good. But the other thing is that I've got to get it apart, because when I tried to pull that top part off, I probably ruined the gaskets, and there's probably O-rings in there that seal the hydraulic ports. So I've got to get that apart, get it up on a bench, get it apart, be able to disconnect that adjustment shaft and be able to take that top part off so that I can access gaskets, O-rings, and take a look at whatever's in there. But I just kind of wanted to do this intro to you might find it a little comical as to how I tried to when I was still trying to get that thing off of the seat post plate. A little comical as to kind of what happened. It wouldn't come up straight, so I tried to correct it by slinging it in the same place and putting a counter correction into it to pick up the other side, and it gets a little comical, but it's off. And that's what this entire video is going to be about, getting it off and kind of showing you a brief glimpse of inside. One of the things that I did was I took a piece of rope and tied it in between here, because when I picked it up before, this side was heavy and it was canting those rods that go down into the rear end down or over at an angle, and I didn't want to bend them. So what I did was put that in there, hoping that it would pick it up at a little bit of a straighter angle. And that didn't work. For some reason that broke that rope. For some reason it seems to be jamming in there. I'm not sure if those rods are connected down there, or if I just because I'm picking it up at an angle. Let me take a better look at it and bring you back. Let me tell you what I'm doing here. I'm going to take a different approach to trying to lift this off. Instead of having that nylon sling on it, I'm going to put a chain around it. As you probably saw in the last clip, I tried to counterbalance it with using an old rope. The rope was really bad. I mean, it was old. It's one of those old weight pulley ropes out of a window, and it was really old. But anyways, all I'm doing right now is just chasing this thread out. What I'm going to do is just string that chain down around that hydraulic unit and then back up here and bolt it in and just kind of lift it that way. So just chasing the threads right now, and then I'll bring you back when I'm pulling it out with using the chain. Hopefully it works better than that rope idea. That rope idea probably would have worked if I'd used a good rope. Okay, so my next issue was I put this chain through there, chased this bolt out, which happens to be 1/2 inch, but the bolt won't fit through the chain. So let me see if I can find a bigger piece of chain that bolt will fit through, and I can thread it through there. Okay, so here we go. Take whatever it is. How often I try to pull this thing off up here. Yeah, see? Those rods are going down at an angle. I don't know whether we should try shifting the gantry crane back a little bit and see if well, before I drop a bunch of dirt and stuff down in there, I'm going to get the vacuum and I don't know whether you can see that, but I'm going to vacuum all that dirt off of there. But I'm having issues pulling that thing out of there because it appears that those tube or rod, whatever it is going down at an angle, and it doesn't really want to come out. So maybe that's why they took this thing apart as one piece, but let me address that. Kind of giving you just a shot to show you that them things are going down at an angle like that, so that's what the issue is, and it's through a hole. I don't know whether you can see that back there, but it's through a hole, so it's not like I've got a slot where those things could come up at an angle. I've got a hole which is a tight fit, so it binds on it when I bring it up. So let me, I've got to get this dirt off of here. You can see how bad that thing, bad that dirt is. I vacuumed a lot of it up, but there is a bunch of oil ports and seals in there. Back in there, so I just don't want to get anything down in there. So let me do a little housekeeping and I'll bring you back. Okay, let me tell you what I'm going to do is there is some bolts in this thing that are actually underneath this thing. It apparently go down at an angle, and let me see if I can pick you up a little bit and show you that they are countersunk into that thing at an angle. Some of these bolts, or one of the bolts, maybe two of the bolts, are underneath this thing. So to begin with, I don't know what those bolts are for, but I'm kind of done screwing around with this thing. I'm thinking if you pick this entire plate up, it no longer would be in a restricted hole to get it up because it's at an angle. What I'm going to do is set this thing back down again, and I'm going to try to just bolt it on kind of temporarily, just loosely bolt it on, pull the bolts out of the big seat plate, and pick the whole thing up as a piece, as a unit, as they kind of show it being done in the manual. I think that would eliminate that problem of those lines, tubes, rods, whatever they are, that are going down at an angle. Okay, I'll bring it back. I'm starting to break these bolts free. One of the things that I'm kind of doing as I'm doing this, I'm kind of looking for a place to rig it off of, so that I can have a way of slinging it up. Thing has got to be pretty heavy, but I'll bring you back. Just pulling some of the bolts out and putting them in that container. Not some of them, but all of the bolts out and putting them in that container. There's a couple of them that have got those wire clamps on them. Probably going to end up replacing all of these wires. It would have been nice if I could have gotten this kind of braided stuff, and I'm not sure if that's still available for the wire harness. I'm going to go through. There's a couple of I'm not really sure what they are. Let me show it to you. Hang on a second. There's a couple of spots on this thing where it's got like a hole in the casting, and I'm going to have to clean it up. But there's that one. There's one on the other side, totally opposite of it, and I'm kind of wondering if they're not. See, there's one over here too. Kind of wondering if they're not threaded ports for like lifting rings for this thing, but let me check it out. There's a couple of spots up here too that see, there's a spot up here. There's so much dirt on it. Let me I'll have to clean it up, but I'm going to just continue on taking these bolts out and putting them in a container just so they stay separate and organized. One of the things I want to show you is this is the condition of the bolts that I've taken them out, and I told you before that I had a couple of leaks. Well, it looks like there was a leak here because there's grease, dirt that's embedded on grease or oil. And when I took this bolt out, it is terribly greasy. So I think probably that gasket there was leaking. Could have caused some of the oil that I had down below too. If you remember right, I told you that I thought I had a couple of leaks, and I found one was a bad fitting on the side of the transmission housing. But I'll see, these bolts are clean, but I'll bring you back. One of the things that I'm going to do, back to doing, and I know that I've talked about this in previous videos, but when there's two things that they're going to, I looked at the manual, and sorry for sounding confused. I looked at the manual. How they rigged this thing up is they left the seat bracket on and just slung underneath the seat bracket to pick it up with. So I'm going to have to come up with another scenario. I'm not putting the seat bracket back on again. But one of the other things that they showed, these 3-point hitch arms, swing arms off of it. So I am just going to attempt it to try and take them off to try and lessen some of the weight that I have to pick up. But anyways, bring you back. So what I did was got a thin chisel that would fit in between there, because I thought I was really dreading taking these things off. And I put it in there and just tapped a little bit and it moved right away. So it was pretty loose. And I'll take you over and show you the other side when it comes off. One of the things that I kind of need to do, and this video will help do that, is kind of figure out the position, the angle that these things were in when I took them off, because they're splined, they could be clocked any ways to put them back on again. So from the video, I'm going to have to kind of remember the angle that they came off at. I knew that other one was too good to be true. This one is not coming off as easy. I've just started working on it, but I know that it's not coming off as easy. What I'm trying to do is use that chisel as a wedge, and I've got to do it at an angle because the chisel would bottom out against the spline shaft first. So I move it a little bit, then use the pry bar on the bottom of it to pull it out a little farther. It's coming. It's just going to be a slow process. Yeah, this thing's going to fight me every step of the way. I'll bring you back. One of the things that I've got is I've got some end play in it. So I got it out. What I did is I sprayed some PB Blaster into around the edge of the splines. And then I just took a hammer and actually gently tapped it back on. Now what I'll do is I'll pull it out. What I did is pushed it back in as far as that would go. You see that in the play in the shaft. So I pushed it back in, tapped this back on a little bit, and you could actually see it move. And now what I'll do is do that again, and hopefully that PB Blaster got in there. See, it comes out so far and then it stops. See how I've got it out there? Now if I push that back, take that end play out of it. See, I can get it back in again. It gets to that one spot and it doesn't seem to want to move. Might be able to get a puller on it and try pulling it if I can't get it. What I'm going to do is knock it back in again, spray some more of that PB Blaster on it, knock it back in again and let it sit for a minute, and then try. Just so you can see, I waited a while, downloaded the videos out of the camera and let the camera charge a little bit, and then came back, and it did come off a little farther, but it's still not giving it up. I'm going to try beating on it a little bit off of camera, and I'll let you know what happens. I might soak it again and have to push it back in if beating it. What I'm going to do is try and, it's at a weird spot, but what I'm going to do is try and get a, I've got a drift pin that iron workers use to line steel beams up with. I'm just going to use that to try and hit against it, but I'm going to do that off camera. I'll bring you back and let you know what happens. No, it didn't work hitting it with a pin. It was too much of an angle. You really couldn't get a straight shot behind it. So what I did is I soaked it a little more with penetrating oil and hammered it back in again, and I'll wait a little longer. Eventually it'll come. So it didn't come off the next time, but it keeps coming out a little farther each time that I do it, so hopefully pretty quick. Okay, what I ended up doing is just tapping the back side of this thing. Yeah, I still can't get it off yet, but Let me put you in a different spot. Put you over on the other side. I just don't want to tap it off because kind of like right where I'm tapping it is the center of it. There it goes. Was the center of gravity, and I couldn't get my hands there while I was tapping on it, so I just didn't want it to fall off, but we're good. It's kind of funny, I took those bolts out and look at the oil line that's developing around that top plate. What I did is I got one of the bolts up into the top, so it's held on and in place right now. So what I've got to do is get a small screwdriver, see if I can get it started under there. I'm probably going to wrap a sling. Around the two 3-point hitch pivot arms and come down here around the back up to the top, and then I've got to get something off of the front to kind of counterbalance it. So I'll bring you back for that. So do you remember one of the previous clips I was wondering what these indentations were for, and I thought maybe they had been tapped for lifting rings? It's not. It's alignment pins. There's a pin that goes down through there. But I'll bring it back. I've actually picked up the back. I broke the seal, as you can see. Heavy a piece of equipment though. I've got to get a support down to the front somehow, so let me work on that and I'll bring you back. Okay, so it's off. All I've got to do now is clear room for it. There's a rod. I kind of figured out where that rod goes to, and I would have never gotten it off since it's pinned onto a lever down below. So when I get it off, I'll show it to you. What I've got to do is build a little crib to set this thing on, so that lever will clear. I can set it evenly on the floor, and that lever will clear the floor. So I'll bring you back. So I've got the seat cover off and just down on the floor. Now what I did is took a piece of 2x8 and just stuck under there temporarily. Just got it kind of resting on the floor. I will make a little cradle for it after I see. I would like to be able to get some of that stuff apart. You know, I want to get that top off of there, that hydraulic unit off of there, because I want to replace some O-rings in there. I want to clean that out good, maybe get it some paint on it. So that crib that I'm going to make has got to be high enough where I'm going to be able to work on it but still be stable, because that rod that goes down there, now there is like a rod in a tube, and I'm talking about the things that I couldn't get out. Haven't checked the tube, but that rod definitely goes down there and connects to a lever. I would have never been able to get that thing out of there. So in order to get that top unit off, the least I'm going to have to be able to do, or have to do, is disconnect that lever, or that rod off the lever, to be able to pull that out, get it cleaned up, replace that gasket and O-rings. I'm just going to show you a quick video of this. I'm not going to do anything on it, and I'm probably going to end this chapter here. A couple of the things that I wanted you to notice, or have people answer me, is there is definitely marks there where something has scraped it. Now, it hasn't scraped it recently, because the marks are oil impregnated from probably the fluid in there. So it wasn't a recent thing or an ongoing thing. But one of the things that I'm going to have to look at is up in that housing is what was scraping on that thing. The next thing that I need to do is the other thing that I kind of wanted to show you, and let me show it to you. It looks like a piece of casting broke off of there, and it looks like it broke off fairly recently. Let me reposition the camera. Well, there's that where I thought that casting was broken off of there. And again, I don't know what it's for. I'll research the manual. It could have been just a flow port when they cast it, or like a relief when they cast it, so that they were ensured that the cast iron got to every place in the mold. But I'm not really sure. I mean, if you go over to the other side, you really, let me take you over to the other side so I can switch the slide around. And I don't know, that's kind of what you got. But I got to tell you, the thing looked like it broke off to me. But anyways, again, I'm going to end the video here and this chapter here, and I'll bring you back when I check the backlash and everything on it and do more exploration in the inside of this thing. Yeah, I'll bring you back.